Gary Raymond Callahan. I was born in Inglewood. We moved to Orange County, Huntington Beach, when I was about 6 years old. So pretty much I grew up behind the orange curtain. I spent some time downtown during the late 80s when I was in school at Art Center. Come down for the clubs at night and go over to Gorky's, get something to eat. So that was my first introduction to downtown. After school, I was dickering around. Didn't really know what I was going to do. I'd gone to film school and really disliked putting in 16-hour days to work on low-budget features as artistically were just crap. I had gone back to Orange County. I was working at Disneyland, which is a place that I worked when I was 17. Growing up in Orange County, that's like your most interesting artistic expression down there. Not unlike the Arts District in some ways, with its emphasis on nostalgia and longing for the past. And in '92, we had the riots in LA. I'm watching on the TV, and I have friends up here. A guy I went to school with had a studio at Factory Place, and I came up for a visit just after the riots, May or so, and we're driving around in Little Tokyo, and the National Guard is out, all loaded up, full military gear, M16s, and we go over to the Arts District, and there's no National Guard here. It was just cool. So I kind of started talking with another buddy of mine I went to school with, and we decided to share a loft and move into Factory Place. Rents were cheap, in part because of the riots and because that era when it was booming down here in the 80s kind of ended. So there was a sort of an open city kind of a vibe to this part of town. And it was very quiet. You'd have the homeless and the artists living here. During the day, you'd have a bunch of trucks backing up, making these awful beep, beep, beep noises. And that was about all the activity there was. There was about four of us that had gone to Art Center together, and we had studios at Factory Place. I remember when I was negotiating my lease, I actually built a model of what I wanted constructed inside the loft. Top floor loft, and it had 2 mezzanine bedrooms in it with storage underneath. The conditions were at that time, they needed tenants so bad that they were willing to negotiate constructing a major portion of this interior structure with cantilevered beams and everything. And then I agreed to finish off just doing the drywall, the mudding, and the taping. It was a great space, totally not to code, but that's exactly why you live downtown, right? You just come in and, stake your turf and build your world. Kind of like an island in the middle of the city. I didn't really start doing art as a career until I started doing really high-end decorative art. I transitioned out of scenic and storyboard work in the film business. In film, you get somebody breathing down your neck saying, just finish it, nobody cares, the camera's going to see it for 2 seconds, maybe. Doing artwork on a film set is just not very rewarding in that way. So I started doing these really high-end homes in the most expensive parts of LA. They'd give me time, and they'd be allowing me to create something on their ceiling or walls that they were going to live with. It was much more rewarding. The thing about this place was great. It was a family. We all just made stuff happen for one another. It wasn't about getting noticed in the art world. It was just about putting on an event, having some expression of whatever you were doing in a kind of a safe environment where you were accepted by people who cared about you and the effort you were putting in. Whether they liked it or not, they kind of championed you as doing your thing. When Don Jones died, there was a spontaneous wake, and the gathering in the middle of the intersection of Traction and Hewitt, drum circles, and everybody came out with candles and burned a couch. That was really cool, very tribal. Cops didn't come down, fire department, nobody cared. This was a very isolated little part of town. Now you can't do that. When Coffee Strippers opened, and Alberto Mieres with his flame-throwing espresso rod, and that whole event out here on Traction and Hewitt was just fantastic. I knew I was in the right neighborhood, and I wanted to be part of it. The way you were noticed is you had to contribute something. I kind of got noticed during the Cure Autism Now benefit that was put on over there by the loading docks, which is now SciArt. A little community festival with art and music, and Beck played, brought the whole band, and ended up being, I think, the first unofficial show for the Odelay tour. It was fantastic. Everybody came together and volunteered their time, put in hours, and made that thing happen as a community effort. And because I did that, I got recognized. That's when Alberto gave me the nickname G-Man. Alberto was the godfather of this little neighborhood. Coffee strippers, and when it became Bloom's General Store, I'd hang out there in the morning, out in the street, and read the paper. Just that's where everybody gathered. It was a little corner store. It's still a market today. Everybody who lives here now is doing the same thing. All of us OGs, we're watching these youngsters doing it, and I love it. I think it's great. Bloom forever would always call me G-Man. The G-Man's here. After I left the Arts District and was living in Venice, I'd come back and say hello and check in, because he was the one who was on top of everything and dealing with the city. And I'm like, Joel, how's it going? What's going on? What's the latest? He usually would greet me very warmly. But one time I'm out in front of the store and I said, Joel, how you doing? He goes, I'm dying of cancer. How do you think I'm doing? Okay, Joel. What do you say to that? Well, that was Joel. He just said it like it was. I went to Chicago, and I came back with some stuff for him, and he put it up on his wall behind the counter. A little server's hat from the Billy Goat Tavern, and some Chicago White Sox stuff. Don't ever confuse the Cubs with the White Sox with Joel Bloom. It was nice that he got to see the White Sox win the World Series before he passed. I was very happy for him. He could be a worse curmudgeon, but when he lit up, he really lit up the room. It's nice that there's a plaque out on the street and that the city has named Joel Bloom Square after him and his memory. And I think it's really great that we've had an event now that we call Bloomfest.
Bloomy! That's why we're here. We love you!
And I'd like to see it continue. It's a festival in memory of Joel Bloom. And then by extension, it's a memory of all of us who've lived here, whether you were there in the 70s, 80s, 90s, now. It doesn't matter. It's a celebration of the community. That's why I got involved with the Bloomfest. Kind of felt like the way they were marketing it was like, is this about flowers blooming and things blooming downtown? No, it's supposed to be about Joel Bloom. I was asked to curate a small pop-up gallery to make sure that we were commemorating Joel and a bit of the history of the Arts District. And the first thing that came to my mind was a series of photos that Tony Wells had shot against the red brick wall right outside the store. I was just one of the people that she photographed. And it's one of the most honest portraits of me anyone's ever taken. It's more than a snapshot. It's an honest-to-goodness portrait. In commemorating Bloomfest that year, I wanted to celebrate not just Bloom, but a lot of other people that were part of the community during that era where the Arts District really became an identifiable community officially within the city. It was important for me that that aspect of Bloomfest be conveyed to everybody who was going to be attending. Because the people who were around in the past need to pass on those stories to the people who are here now, because they're making their own stories. And unless we talk about it, they're not going to know. It's our responsibility to share the history with them. They'll embrace it. We were all here at one point. And what's great about it is you get to keep it for the rest of your life, all those relationships you make. And we've got people that are in New Orleans and Vermont, all over the country that were part of this scene for a certain time. And that connection just never goes away. You see these people and it's like you're running into your family members. That's the lesson. Like, for everybody here who's here now, just do the same thing. Be part of a community and form these great friendships, and they'll last your lifetime. House Bar was the complete opposite of anything I knew growing up in Orange County. It was a dump and a dive and had graffiti over every inch of it. And the best thing of all, besides Stacy, the bartender, was behind her was a sign in neon that said, Tip or die. Tip or die, man. Al's Bar. I can't imagine back then, all of us having a beer on a Friday night happy hour and talking and saying, you know, someday there's going to be a yoga studio down here. Are you kidding me? You'd get the shit beat out of you. For a while, I was working as an art handler with a bunch of the guys that lived here in the hotel for LA Packing and Crating. We'd basically move art around LA and install it in the collectors' homes. So on Friday nights, we'd get off work and we'd go right to Al's Bar. That's when Jake Labatz was playing. Awesome bluesman. He lived here and he was playing for rent. And those evenings with him playing there and hanging out with all the buddies I worked with and swapping our war stories from the week of collectors and the art we'd seen, those are my favorite memories of Al's, more than, you know, when the bands were playing or anything. Just Al's Bar as the local hangout. I toyed with the idea of having a studio space here, but not living here. I'm very good friends with Jaime Colindres. He lives on this floor, and last year he had a show across the street with about 80 paintings in this show. All of those paintings painted in his tiny little room here at the American Hotel in oil. Beautiful paintings. He's been around a long time, and he's gone through some stuff where he's lived other places and there's been fires where he's lost all of his life's work. Jaime's somebody special, and he loves everything that's been happening in this community, except for maybe the rent going up. It's not a sleepy little island anymore. It's a vibrant arts community with a lot of energy. It's like Disneyland. It's Bohemian land. I think Melissa just posted something about hipsters in the neighborhood, and I just had to chuckle. And I commented, like, hipster is a pejorative used to describe young people by former hipsters. I think what's going on down here is fantastic. It's sort of what we all envisioned happening back when it was pretty sleepy and quiet. When we'd come out in the morning and get coffee outside of Bloom's and sit there and read the LA Times, not on the internet, read the paper, the downtown news, and we'd talk about this building or that building sitting there vacant and all the potential for what could happen down here. This is how it's supposed to be. People who buy property in an area that needs to be repurposed, an old factory warehouse part of town. Artists move in, rent's cheap. Unfortunately, at some point, everybody discovers it. And then the artists have to find a new place. Burn it. Bootleg lofts in real industrial parts of town. Or the desert. Joshua Tree. Landers. That's where the real former hipsters are, making it happen. Everybody should know the story of the giant sycamore tree that was a couple blocks away where the freeway on-ramp is. Giant sycamore tree for 400 years was there. Before Europeans, Spanish, anybody came here, before Los Angeles was founded as a pueblo. That giant sycamore tree was really the first civic location of this city. That's where the Indians had their council meetings. That tree is in, I believe, the first photograph taken from the hill behind the plaza. And you can see it in the distance. 6 stories high, 200-foot canopy. Before there was any development of communities, one of the first winemakers in California brought the first French vines to California, and there were vineyards everywhere. That's all gone. The American Hotel used to have a vine in its courtyard outside of Al's Bar. One of the restaurants was dumping their grease into the pit, and they killed it. So what's going to happen to the American Hotel? Somebody's going to dump a bunch of grease in it and kill it, or an earthquake's going to come. And they'll evict everybody. The property's worth more now than probably the building is. So what's going to happen to the American Hotel? Well, it ain't going to last 400 years like that tree did. It's going to go away just like that tree did. When I'm asked about what attracted me to this part of town and this little arts community, American Hotel, and the people that lived here, I just say it was the island of misfit toys. Creative people being themselves, coming from somewhere else, from different family backgrounds and some messed up situations, and they all kind of found this place. everybody ended up here with their little quirks and their messed up ways and formed a community. You could be yourself and be embraced.
Cut.